By now, I'm sure you've all heard about the incredibly serious allegations against Representative Eric Swalwell. He's a Democrat that's running for governor of California as well, and he's been accused of inappropriate behavior, of assaulting women, and other very horrific things. The allegations are detailed. There are records to back it up, text messages to back it up. It is just heartbreaking across the board. And the women who came forward are incredibly courageous. I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. And the creators who were talking about the story before it even dropped share that courage as well. Democrats across the board have called for him to not only drop his bid for governor of California, but to also resign from Congress. And I agree, he should do both of those things. This is yet another example of how the Democratic Party is vastly different than the Republicans. I mean, we hold our own accountable when they do something wrong. The Republicans, on the other hand, they very obviously do not do that, especially when it comes to Trump.
Okay, so this is why we wait for allegations to come out, right? This is why we wait for real evidence. Y'all, these are a doozy. This is technically behind a paywall. I'm going to read it. I'm going to let you be the judge, but let's just say they're a doozy. So the woman is remaining anonymous, but she says that she worked for Eric Swalwell for about 2 years. You know, she basically had an affair with him while he was married. She was not. He's 17 years older than her, right? And she said that at first the relationship was consensual, but then there were 2 instances in which she was too intoxicated to consent. Eric Swalwell, by the way, has vehemently denied all of this. He says that this didn't happen. I mean, I think regardless, there is going to have to be a change. BT Dubs, he also sent her a cease and desist letter, which a lot of people are saying is, oh, how horrifying. I'm like, I don't necessarily think that's telling. The woman said that she started working for Eric Swalwell in 2019. She worked at his office in Castro Valley. She was 21 years old, all right? Swalwell messaged her on Snapchat pretty soon after she started and sent images of his private parts and asked for nude photos from her. There was one night where they were driving home from a donor meeting and she actually drove him home and he tried to kiss her. It's another event a few weeks later. She drove him home yet again. Eric Swalwell exposed himself in the car and asked her to perform oral on him. And she said that she did that in a parking lot. Okay. So then in September 2019, the woman said Swalwell invited her out and she became severely intoxicated, so much so that she basically blacked out. She said that she woke up undressed in his hotel room bed. Right? She said that she could feel that there had been intercourse, but she doesn't remember it. So then 5 years later, she attended a charity gala. This is 2024 now. And the woman, she no longer worked for Swalwell. She said they met for drinks after a charity gala. And she became so inebriated that she only remembers snippets of the night, which included pushing Swalwell away and telling him no while he allegedly forced himself on her. Okay. The woman texted her friends 3 days later and said that she was SA'd by Swalwell. She wrote this in a series of messages that was actually reviewed by the journalist in the Chronicle, that she had blacked out, but woke up once during it and even told him to stop while the encounter was actually occurring. So the journalist from the Chronicle spoke with her friend and the woman's boyfriend at the time, whom she said that she actually had told about the assault in 2024 when she'd actually gotten home that day. Both described her as still really disoriented that morning, and her boyfriend said he actually encouraged her to report Swalwell to the police. The woman said she didn't want to go though because she was afraid that they wouldn't believe her. So the woman said she got pregnancy and STD tests and told the physician's assistant who administered them what had happened. The Chronicle reviewed the office summary of her visit, which took place a week after the alleged assault and included a throat swab for chlamydia and gonorrhea, as well as HIV and syphilis screenings. The provider even wrote in the meeting notes, right? He said, "You are a survivor, always proud, and I admire your strength. Shine on." Rohit Karn Batra, right, a friend of Swalwell's, confirmed to the Chronicle that he did attend the gala, but said he did not speak much with Swalwell during the event. When the gala concluded sometime around sunset, which would have been shortly before 8 p.m. that night, and that the congressman actually invited him to get drinks afterwards. Batra said he agreed and that they drove to a bar. He said he spent a little time at the gathering talking to Swalwell, who was occupied with talking with others. Batra, his friend, said he left that bar after about an hour and a half because he was tired and needed to get back to New Jersey where he was staying. That would have been before 11:30 p.m., which is the time that the woman said that she actually met up with Eric Swalwell that night. She said she texted with Swalwell perhaps a dozen times in the last 2 years, including about a job offer to work on his gubernatorial campaign earlier this year, which she said that he turned down. She largely kept quiet about his behavior out of fear that she would suffer personal and professional consequences. He said, he was the foundation of my career. I had nothing to fall back on or anyone to vouch for my skills outside of my colleagues in the office and Eric himself. I knew that if I came forward, it would define me and undermine my credibility. I don't know. What do you guys think? I wish that she had come forward last year.
So Swalwell's downfall was pretty swift. In less than a week, he went from the front runner or a front runner in the California gubernatorial race to exiting not just that contest, but Congress. Walk us through your view of how it all played out on your end as survivors came to you with their stories.
It was surreal, Jake, truly surreal. So my close personal friend, Annika Albrecht, reached out to me 17 days ago now and disclosed that she had had an experience of sexual harassment with a congressman and that it had altered the entire trajectory of her career and that she knew that there were others and that she had heard on the Hill that there were NDAs. I worked on the Hill. I had heard rumors for years that Swalwell was a creep, but this was beyond what I knew. She asked me to use my platform to make a video, and I did. Within hours, I was getting flooded with direct messages from women who wanted to tell me their stories, and they all thought that they were alone. I was on the phone with women who were as young as 18 years old talking about being harassed as interns, and then I was hearing stories of sexual assault. And I realized that this was much bigger than any of us knew, and that we were going to have to assemble a team. And I have to give credit to the investigative team at CNN, who we worked with really closely and opted to bring these women to.
Pamela and Allie and the team, amazing work.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, and great rapport with these survivors, and they built that trust. And I was just thrilled to be able to be a conduit for that trust and to say, you can come here and your anonymity will be protected. We connected them with pro bono legal counsel so they knew their rights. And, you know, I'm glad we did too. And those lawyers were incredible because Swalwell's team definitely tried to intimidate them and tried to keep them silent, but they were brave and they moved forward, and here we are.
A Republican and a Democrat just announced they are resigning from Congress over sexual misconduct allegations. The Democrat, of course, Representative Eric Swalwell of California, he not only dropped out of the race for California governor, he just announced he's also resigning his seat in Congress. And seconds ago, Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas also said he's resigning. Now, here's the thing. Swalwell and Gonzalez aren't the only ones who may be out of Congress before the midterm election. So let's start with Swalwell. He just posted to his social media page saying, it's wrong for my constituents to have me distracted from my duties. Therefore, I plan to resign my seat in Congress. We need to acknowledge the absolute speed in which Swalwell fell. Just 4 days ago, he was the leading Democrat in the race to be the next governor of California, but bombshell allegations of sexual assault were brought against him by former female staffers. Immediately, he lost key endorsements and support in California. There were calls for him to drop out of the race. By Saturday, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office put out a statement saying it was opening a criminal investigation into those assault allegations because they allegedly happened in New York. By Sunday, the calls were getting louder from Congress for him to resign his House seat. And in fact, many Democrats said they would support a resolution to expel Swalwell from his seat if he refused to step down. Yesterday, Swalwell said he was dropping out of the race for California governor. And today, the House Ethics Committee announced it was opening an investigation into him too. So a short time ago, Swalwell said he was resigning. He apologized in his post, saying, I am deeply sorry to my family, staff, and constituents for mistakes in judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations made against me. However, I must take responsibility and ownership of the mistakes I did make. He then went on to say of the effort trying to expel him from Congress that expelling anyone from Congress without due process within days of an allegation being made is wrong. But then he said he would resign and he will work with his staff in the coming days to ensure that they are able to serve the needs of the good people of the 14th Congressional District. He did not say when his last day would be. Now, let's talk about Representative Tony Gonzalez of Texas. He just posted to his social media page saying, there is a season for everything and God has a plan for us all. When Congress returns tomorrow, I will file my retirement from office. It has been my privilege to serve the great people of Texas. Now, Tony Gonzalez has been under investigation for a while by the House Ethics Committee for allegations of sexual misconduct, also with a staffer. That woman, sadly, ultimately took her own life. Gonzalez had already said that he would not run for re-election, but when the Swalwell thing started to really heat up, the calls started to come from inside the Republican House for Gonzalez to step down now. It's important to know that now that Swalwell and Gonzalez are resigning, the House ethics investigations into them will likely stop, and that committee no longer has jurisdiction over them. But as I mentioned, Swalwell and Gonzalez aren't the only ones who may be out of Congress sooner rather than later. Another Democrat, Representative Sheila Surflewis McCormick of Florida, is on the verge of being expelled. The House Ethics Committee concluded that she violated ethics rules after a grand jury indicted her on charges she stole pandemic relief funds and put them towards her campaign. She has denied any wrongdoing. And then, of course, there is Republican Representative from Florida, Corey Mills, who is also under investigation by House Ethics over allegations of campaign finance violations and accusations of sexual misconduct and or dating violence. The House will be returning from recess tomorrow, and it is possible we could start seeing some real talk about expulsion for these two congressmen, too. Now, this is serious. It doesn't happen very often. In Congress's 237-year history, there have only been 6 members of the House expelled. The last, of course, was Republican Representative from New York, George Santos, in 2023.
I made a video yesterday saying I suspected Eric Swalwell's behavior was an open secret, and many of you were pissed with me. I'm a lawyer in real life. I don't play one on television. Today, there's evidence emerging that I was correct. First, there's an article in the New York Times that says some potential supporters in California said they had heard that Swalwell had a reputation for hitting on young women, but when they asked him about it during endorsement interviews, he blew it off as purely rumor. He went on to be endorsed by those very people. There's this post by a reporter from his hometown. He said he's known about his behavior since 2013, as well as the Alameda Democratic Party. And then we have this.
Every member in Congress knows not to let any young staffer get around Swalwell or Matt Gaetz. It's not a secret there. There's a reason why you didn't want those two people around.
If the Epstein files taught us nothing else, it should have taught us that they know. Now, y'all let me know what you think now that you've seen this information.
I made a video prior that I am used to hit pieces by the opposition, and I framed the allegations coming out about the girls as something that may have fallen in that category. But the San Francisco Chronicle just released the most damning article. I read it, and as of right now, I believe the victims. I believe especially the main victim.
Hey, so I have a question. Had this been a Republican white man, would you have believed the victims right away? Because I feel like you wouldn't have needed more stories to come out for you to believe the victims had his party affiliation been different. But when you take away the party, they all still have one thing in common. They're white men. Because statistics show white men are the ones that women should be fearing the most. And yes, I would say it is more common within the Republican Party. However, they still have one thing in common. And I think this happens with white women so much. They don't want to see that one thing that they always still have in common, and that's that they're white men. I'm not saying it's all white men, but it's almost always, it's a white man. Because why didn't you believe them at first? There's been whispers about this happening for months. I have been hearing about this for months, that he has been inappropriate with staffers. And I find it very hard to believe that this would have came out of nowhere to you, that this was brand new information, that this man had been inappropriate with multiple women, younger women, whom he had power over. So what really was it that made you have to have extra information to believe these women over just their word?
Eric Swalwell's wife was 5 months pregnant when he was in that Vegas hotel room with that other woman, and someone else was doing the introduction to his sex tape using Snapchat. Dude, gross. Not only was she pregnant, but they already had a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old at home when his campaign paid $1,100 to the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Vegas just hours before it was recorded. At least that's what Swalwell's FEC filings show. And see, the forensic analysis and the metadata shows that that video was recorded recorded on July 13th, 2021, just before 5 a.m. Pacific time on an Apple device, and the video is consistent with one that's recorded through Snapchat. Dude, you're like 40. This is embarrassing. Meanwhile, his wife gave birth to their third child, Harold Hank Warren Swalwell, on November 2nd, 2021, just 3.5 months after that. Dude, you're not only being accused of rape and abuse of power and probably misuse of campaign finance funds, but you're also just a terrible husband. Good news for you is you can run as a Republican now.
Notice how Democrats, pretty much across the board, immediately called for Eric Swalwell to pull out of the governor's race, to resign, for there to be an investigation, and for him to be held accountable. Because that is what you do when someone is credibly accused of something terrible. Even if it's someone that you may have supported, may have voted for, may be politically aligned with, that is what you do. Some people need to learn that lesson. You do not continue to stand by them. You don't make excuses. You definitely don't victim blame. You call for them to be held accountable, even if you supported them in the past.
I'm seeing a lot of debate and comments saying that something is fishy about the Eric Swalwell story, specifically the sexual assault accusations against him. But what they're missing is that CNN did not just take anonymous accusations and run with them. The reporting says that the network corroborated key parts of 4 different women's accounts by reviewing text messages and other correspondence, screenshots verifying them, talking to family members, to friends, to colleagues that they confided in, and then even cross-checking details to outside material like video and interview footage. Now, of course, that doesn't prove every allegation in a court of law, but it does show the difference between a simple rumor and a thoroughly reported story. And I should mention that Swalwell has denied the allegations and called them flatly false. But this is why it is so important to read stories and not just the headline, because it's in the copy where you see what was verified, who was contacted, if anybody, what documentation exists, if any, whether the accused was given a chance to respond, and whether the outlet did the work to test the claims instead of just amplifying them. In this case, CNN says that it corroborated key elements of each woman's account and included Swalwell's denials and the cease and desist response from his lawyer. Now, I'm not saying that all women should just be blatantly believed, and I'm not saying that all journalists should as well for their work, but I am saying that when survivors are being asked to go on the record against a very powerful politician in a time when he's got the news covering him every day, responsible reporting often looks slow and repetitive and painstaking, because it is. The burden is higher when the allegations are this serious, when the subject is this prominent, and when the possible harm to sources is this severe. Ultimately, people have been trained to treat any delay in publication as proof that mainstream outlets are hiding something or intentionally timing the story, but often the delay is the reporting. It's the process of verifying and cross-checking and documenting and lawyering a story before publication. That's not a political motive. That's the job.
With all of the stories coming out about Congressman Eric Swalwell, very serious allegations of sexual assault, and just other stories of women being harassed by him or hit on by him, I thought carefully about whether or not I wanted to say anything, but friends of mine who had been present during one of the experiences was like, you know, it might help other survivors come forward, given that the more voices and the more prominent women speak up, the more they feel comfortable, you know, sharing their own story and their own truth and standing their ground. So I really don't know Eric Swalwell. I have met him a couple of times. I honestly don't even think he knows who I am, despite the fact that I had 2 instances with him. One was after the Unity Reform Commission vote at the DNC meeting in 2018. We were in the hotel lounge with a group of people in the DNC, some very notable people, and we're having drinks celebrating. And he came over and started talking to me and offered to buy me a drink. And then it just escalated. And he was clearly hitting on me to the point that when he went to go get drinks, someone at the table was like, you know, he's married, and he's really aggressively hitting on you. And I was like, I know, it's a little uncomfortable because it was a group environment on top of it. And then he kept going, and I'm pretty sure he was buzzed or intoxicated. You know, we're all human, fine, we're all celebrating. But it was definitely escalating to the point where I left early just because it was a little bit uncomfortable. And it was visibly uncomfortable. I mean, other people were noticing it too, to the point where people many years later brought it up to me, or continuously brought it up when we'd hear these little rumors. So after that instance, I heard a lot about him, just like so many others in Democratic politics did. And then he slid into my DMs a couple of years ago after a well-known public official passed away that he knew. Wasn't super aggressive. It was just clearly like he was trying to start a conversation and hit on me again. And I don't even think he remembered hitting on me several years prior. So, you know, all of this, people have complicated lives. Lawmakers cheat. Lawmakers have unique arrangements. I really did not have any relationship with this man, but what I was asked by some friends was, we know that you had this situation. It might be worth coming forward just to create more space for others to feel comfortable, because it is part of a pattern. And what I learned after the DNC situation was he did have this reputation, and a lot of lawmakers have this reputation. So online, people are like, well, why didn't you come forward earlier? Or, you know, being hit on isn't sexual assault. And I'm like, yeah, no, I know. I didn't come forward because it wasn't sexual assault. It was just another piece of data that might show that he's a little like slimy, or that he's not loyal to his wife. But again, not my business. I don't care. I didn't have a relationship with him. But what we're seeing now is it is part of a pattern of behavior. All the women he slid into the DMs. Obviously, the allegations against him for violent sexual assault by his subordinates. What I am more concerned about at this point is, if there was this much information out there, leadership knew. And what did leadership do? What did they investigate? Were there investigations open? Was he reprimanded? Did they talk to him? And frankly, I think his colleagues knew. And who hung out with him and went out to these bars and partied with him? Is this part of a deeper problem in the Democratic Party? But like, on top of it all, which really just gets me, is what is the pathology? I mean, politicians a lot of them are narcissistic. Got it. Okay. But what is the pathology of a man to act this way in writing to so many different women in politics, women like me who have, you know, a platform, to his subordinates who he may think he can control, but to show photos of his private parts to his staffer and not think that that is going to be used against him at some point? I mean, we are, 15 years since Anthony Weiner? We've had Me Too going on forever. That also just shows what kind of judgment this man has. You know, it's bad enough that he acted this way and potentially criminal behavior, but he did it in writing, and then he was like, I'm not gonna get caught. I'm just gonna hit on everybody. I'm not gonna get caught at all, and then I'm gonna run for governor in a crowded field in a very expensive race. He thought he was protected. That to me shows this man does not have proper judgment outside of the sexual stuff. He does not have proper judgment as a leader. And we have to have a real conversation about that.
This is how you respond when one of the leaders in our government has allegations come out against them. Now, of course, there's going to be people out there, because I saw it in various comments on TikTok while I was getting the video together. Why now? The timing is suspect. Where's the evidence? And those are natural questions. And of course, there's people from MAGA and on the right who are saying, oh, why are you being a hypocrite? No, you do not have any place to say that. If you're not holding your leader accountable, then you could pipe down and be quiet. But it is a natural question. I'm going to admit, I do think the timing is kind of coincidental, but that's not the point of this. The point of it is that if a woman comes out and says that, hey, this man assaulted me, took advantage of me when I wasn't able to consent, it has to be taken seriously 100%. Because think about it in the history, especially within the past, maybe 10 to 20 years, whenever there's been allegations to come out against someone, how many times can you count the allegations been proven to be false? Not very many times. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all, but usually when there's some allegations, it's true, because unless it's from a person that has an axe to grind, these women that come out to share their experience, they have nothing to gain from it. Now, in these cases, and as this with Swalwell is proving as well, I do feel that, you know, when one comes out, usually a whole bunch of others come out, and we see that time and time again. And when there's multiple, it's really hard to prove that they're not lying. It's usually true. And I think this was the right thing to do, to drop your race for the governor. I didn't even know he was running for governor, but of course I don't live in California and I really don't watch a whole lot of news. I just come upon news just through social media like a lot of people. So I didn't even know that he was running, but that was the right thing to do. And then I think maybe a couple days later, he resigned from his seat in Congress, which was also the right thing to do. And this is how you're supposed to move. And don't take this as me trying to commend him. He did a lot of bad things and he has to be held accountable and has to pay the consequences for that. The women that have come out so far have faced probably a lot of trauma for this. So him getting out of the governor's race and losing his seat, that's nothing in compared to what they had to go through. But this is how it's supposed to be. When there's allegations, you have to remove yourself from a position of power immediately, even though for him it didn't happen right away. But it's better in comparison to a lot of cases where they drag their feet, they try to find ways out of it, and they try to find ways to make the accusers look not credible. But this is how we have to move when we have women coming out against people that have sexually assaulted them. We have to believe them because it helps others come out and it helps put a stop to a lot of these things. Now, Swalwell, with these government officials, a lot of the times they have staffers. It's so many people around them. It's so much opportunity for these men to just cheat. And that's why I'm always just going to say there's bad apples on both sides. I call it out for both sides. I know a lot of my videos and content is about holding MAGA accountable, but we have to hold the people on the left who do things like this and just do other questionable things, hold them accountable as well. Because if we let it just go and ignore it, it allows things to get worse. And that's why I feel that I totally get it. Like there's a lot on the line when you come out and say something against someone who holds a position of power. I totally understand, especially when you work for them and, all of this government work and stuff, it's all word of mouth and it only takes one call to sometimes one person to end your career. But this is why we have to keep in mind that other women are usually affected by this one person. So I wish sometimes, I know it's scary and I know you guys, and my heart goes out to anyone who has dealt with any kind of sexual assault. And like one of the creators said in their videos, is I'm sure a lot of people are aware that this is how he is. And a lot of this stuff gets kept secret. And I really feel, again, this is my opinion. You don't have to agree. I'm sure a lot of people may disagree or agree with it. I honestly feel the way our government works is that if you do something and if one of your colleagues in Congress find out, I feel that it's hey, if you could keep it secret, I'm not saying anything. I really feel that's how it operates because there's so much corruption and wrongdoing in our government. There's definitely at least 10 other people on both sides who probably would have people come out with allegations against them. And that's just for sexual assault, not to mention other things. And as you saw in the Newsgirls clip, there's so many other people that uses their position and their seat to commit fraud and to misappropriate funds and all that stuff, still do sexual assault, try to do all kinds of nefarious things. So I just feel that there could probably be allegations coming out against a whole bunch of other people, but the women are not coming forward. So, we're oblivious to it, but that's just my personal feelings. This is how it should be. When there's allegations against one of our officials in our government, we have to put a stop to it right away. Unlike people on the right, when they just let Trump get away with what, and they act oblivious to it. And yes, you could say there's hypocrisy in this situation as well. And there definitely is. There's going to be hypocrisy in a lot of things. And I call it out when I see it. And I do feel that the people that are asking, why do we have to hold him accountable when Trump's in office? Because if you just let things go, like I said earlier, they're going to get worse. And if we were to let Swalwell just continue to hold the seat and still run for governor, if he gets enough people to vote for him, what if he were to actually become governor, or if he becomes the Democratic, nominee for the California governor? Then if the allegations became too much, then the Republican would win. So you have to check it when it first comes out. In my opinion, everybody would have their own thoughts on how things should go, but I'm glad that the victims have finally come out. I'm glad that they're able to get their story out there, and I'm glad that he's being held accountable. They're investigating right now, so we will definitely be watching to see what happens from here on out. If you made it this far, I appreciate you as always, and don't forget to like and subscribe because that really helps the channel. And don't forget to comment your thoughts because I want to know what you think, and I'm always in the comments. So yeah, I'd like to hear everybody's opinions. Even if you have a different opinion than mine, I'm not gonna lie, I might not comment, but all opinions are welcomed here as long as it's not offensive. Yeah, that's all I have, and I thank you guys for watching once again, and I'm gonna catch you guys in the next video. Bye, see you later.